Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology.
Welcome, everyone, to the Blacks in Technology Bit Tech Talk podcast. I'm your host, Greg Greenlee, the founder of the Blacks in Technology organization, an organization that's focused on increasing the representation and participation of Black people in tech. This is a show where we talk to Black women and men who are engineers, innovators, educators. Let me take that back. Where we talk to Black people who are engineers, innovators, educators, inventors, change makers, and entrepreneurs doing amazing things in the world of technology. This podcast is where they share their stories, experiences, ideas, knowledge, and perspective on tech with the Bit community. If this is your first time checking out this podcast, you can find us at the following URLs and handles. We're at www.blacksintechnology.net. We're also on Twitter, at Black in Technology, and that's BLKINTECHNOLOGY. We're also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram under Blacks in Technology. Blacks in Technology is always focused on forming new partnerships and opportunities to assist our members with their continued professional growth and development. So if you want to partner with us, please send us an email to inquiries@blacksintechnology.net. All right, we got a pretty good one today. I'm really going to enjoy this because I met this person a couple of years ago in the Twin Cities when we had our first BitCon conference. His name is Steve Buchanan. He's a director and Midwest Container Service lead on the cloud transformation DevOps team with, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. I'll let him pronounce it. The Microsoft arm of Accenture, 8-time Microsoft MVP. We'll get into what that means. The author of 6 technical books. He has presented at tech events, including Midwest Management Summit, Microsoft Ignite, BitCon, Experts Live Europe, OSCON, and Users Group. He is active in the technical community, enjoys blogging about his adventures in the world of IT on his blog at buchatech.com. That's BUCHATECH.com. So I want to introduce Steve to the show. Steve, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me, Greg, and happy to be on the podcast.
Oh, no problem. I'm really excited about this. Like I said, we met a couple of years ago, almost 3 years ago. Well, it was about 2 years ago when we were doing BitCon 2018, our first conference in the Twin Cities. And so it's a really good thing when we have that type of interaction. We meet online, we meet through BitCon, and then we get converse with each other. And then we bring that all together. We circle back around and we get you on a podcast. So I'm really excited to talk about your journey in tech. And there's some other things that we want to discuss as well. So jumping right into Q&A, I want you to tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, your education, all that fun stuff.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And by the way, before we get into that, hats off to you and all the people behind Blacks in Technology for everything you do with the chapters to BitCon. I mean, BitCon's something that we've needed for a long time. And also shout out to you and thanks for bringing it to Minnesota. Definitely needed here. So good stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So I'm originally from Minnesota, still here. And I have a bachelor's degree in information technology. And a ton of certifications. Certifications ranging from, CompTIA, like the A+, Linux Plus, things like ITIL, and then more recently received the Docker certification. And then a bunch of, Microsoft certifications on top of all of that as well. So
very nice. Let me ask you this. When did you get your A+? Because it's been a while since I did any CompTIA stuff. It was, I think, my first certification from them was back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I think I got my A plus in the early 2000s as well, like when I was still in college. And
Okay.
it's so old, man, that it's still like it never expires. I have one of those A plus
Right.
certifications that I was grandfathered in, so
Right. So do I.
I love it though because I don't have to retake the test, right? So
Right, right. So I actually have the A plus, the Network Plus, and the Linux Plus all through CompTIA.
nice, nice.
They never expire, so it's always on my resume.
I wanted the Network Plus, and then I started doing more Cisco stuff, and I'm like, I
You
don't
know
know if
what?
I really want to go down the hardcore
Right.
networking path. So I stuck to system administration. So
Ah, it's funny because I've mentored people in the past, um, mainly virtually, and then there's always people that will email Bit and ask about like career paths and things like that, and they'll
yeah,
mention the Network Plus, and I'll say, hey, if you're really interested in networking, if that's your jam, don't go out and purchase the Network Plus exam. I'm saying this, and I'm hoping like CompTIA doesn't hear this, and then like one day, like, oh, we can't be partners with you. You're telling people not to, but I tell them not to actually pay for the exam. I say get the book. If you're new to networking, get the book and study it because there's valuable baseline information in Network Plus that you should know. But
exactly.
after that, just go for your Cisco stuff because that's really where it's at in networking.
That
Get
that
the
is
get the get. Go ahead.
that is spot on. And like I'm glad that I started going down the Network Plus path because I've done networking throughout my career and I still do. And
Yeah,
networking is foundational, but there's definitely a separation between like sysadmins and cloud people that know networking and
yeah,
like a CCIE, right?
yeah.
Someone at that level, like
Right, right. Those guys are. When I first started getting like into like certifications and things like that, like the CCIE, I knew probably one person, like actually knew one person that had a CCIE, and this guy was just incredibly smart, not just in networking, but just all across tech. And that's because it's such a hard exam. It's not one of those exams where you can go, you take a 90-minute, 60-minute to 90-minute multiple choice exam and you're done. This is like a proctored 8-hour
right.
exam, and it's tough to get, and the people who get it are like revered. They're like, oh, bow down to this networking god, right?
Yeah, I think I know one CCIE, and when I found out he
Mm.
was the CCIE, I was blown away because he's the most humble guy out there in the world, and it was like, you're a CCIE? I mean, he's like
Yeah,
I think he's a VP of IT now, and he maintains the
uh,
CCIE, and I'm like, how do you
yeah,
do that with
yeah.
all the other
Every
stuff you have to do? So
right, every couple of years, man, they go and they study for the exam and they take the test again, and yeah, it's crazy. It's something that initially I wanted to. Um, it was I think my goal was more the CCNP. I think I was like, I'm just going to go for the CCNP, not even CC. But it was something that I was like, you know what? If I ever get to that point to where I'm that much of a networking person, then I'll go for the CCIE. But the cloud came and
yep, yep.
all that stuff. I was like, I don't want to deal with networking and stuff anymore like that. So tell us how you got interested in tech. Everybody has their backstory. Tell us what your backstory is.
Yeah, so I never set out to honestly, I never set out to get into tech. In my senior year of high school, and I've told this story a few times, but in my senior year of high school, I landed a job in tech as a PC technician. I was a
Mm,
PC tech, and I was doing a bunch of stuff, right? Building NT servers. I think I started with Windows 3.1.
NT. Wow.
Yeah,
Thinking back.
NT4, and I was like building, CAD computers for companies and just doing a whole bunch of different stuff. And then I started to get into networking. This is so funny. I started to get into networking And then I remember specifically I had to help a company set up this was like some 3Com equipment. And
Mm,
I know you know all about the
yeah.
3Com stuff, but I had to set
Yeah.
up some 3Com equipment and set up like a VPN and remote access and stuff like that so they could have
Hmm.
people work remote. And that was, that doing that work was so interesting to me, having to
Right.
figure that out and figure out how to get all that working. And I was new to technology, right? So a lot of the stuff was
Right.
new to me. Having to figure all that out was super interesting. And that's when I caught the bug and I was like, okay, I want to go further in tech. And I started to research like, what are the career options? How much do people make in tech? Like, how long will it
Hmm.
take for me to reach certain levels and stuff like that? And I decided to go to school for it. And that's when I
Nice.
started pursuing my degrees, right? So I went for a network support specialist degree first, and then so that was a 2-year degree, and then I kept on for the bachelor's in information technology. And at the time, it was either like if you wanted to be a developer, you had to go for a computer science degree. I did not want to
Hmm.
code. I didn't want to be a developer. I wanted to
Hmm.
be on the system administration side of things and
Right.
like IT on the infrastructure side. So then I went the other direction for the other degree.
Let me ask you this: do you ever regret not doing the coding first, and then because I find myself, I'll put it like this: I had a kind of a similar route to you,
Okay.
where I started out. I started out actually in computer retail,
Oh,
right,
okay.
for a company called Micro Center. I don't know if they have a Micro Center
Oh
out there.
yeah, I love Micro Center.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I started working there, and that's where I actually started buying books and things like that. And then from there, I got a job doing help desk support for a local ISP.
Nice.
Uh, and then just gradually went from that. I went to another help desk position. I stayed in help desk for probably about 3 or 4 years, and then after that, a network technician, and then systems admin, and systems engineer, and now DevOps engineer. So I was, I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is what like at what age were you when you went that route? What was
I was so I was like 18 when I started working as the
okay?
PC tech, and
Right.
just like you, like after I decided I wanted to do tech as a career,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to move beyond the PC tech stuff, right? And I
Right.
wanted
Yep.
to like when you're first starting out, for a lot of people, like their dream is like, oh, I want to be the systems administrator or the network admin, right?
Right.
That's like the goal. And so I ended up leaving that job, and I held some help desk jobs. I landed a contract at Target Corp where I was doing some pretty
Mm.
interesting things on one of their teams on a project.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I was in help desk too, and just kind of kept moving up every level as I'd
Right.
get a new job, and then finally landed as a systems administrator. And then after that, I got an opportunity to become a IT manager, and so
Oh wow.
I inherited like a really messed up environment. I mean, this thing was bad, man. Me and my team, we'd be like spending like weekends, and I'm talking about
Oh,
like you get the call, and it's in the middle of the night or the evening, and you're about to sit down and eat dinner, and it's like everything is crashing. So you got to go
yeah.
fix it, right? Or I remember
Yeah.
one time, I think it was the 4th of July, I had to go and fix the network and fix like some servers were crashing. So
Yep.
it took a while, but um me and my team, we were able to clean up that environment, even to the point where it was like, should we really be working here? Everything just runs. Right.
That's kind of that's where you want it, and then you can really
That's
concentrate on other things. But I get it. I worked for a data center company, and there were some days like I would come home and I tell my wife like, so today I really didn't do a lot. Like everything was just humming along. I didn't do a ton, much of anything.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there are. I definitely and it was the same way. Like we had a limited staff, and there would be days where something goes wrong. I get an alert, and either I would I'd have to. I didn't live far from the data center itself. I probably lived like a 2 minute, 4 minute drive at the most.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so I would like just pop in there and see what's going on, and you know fix it if I could, and then
Yeah.
notify everybody else. And yeah.
Y-
Um,
Yeah, so that's how you know when, like if things are quiet, you're doing a good job.
right.
You got things under control. And I think, even back then, we made the shift from always fixing things and putting out fires to
Mm,
what else can we do to team up with this department or that department
right.
and use technology as more of a business enabler. And in fact, that was in like the early days of cloud when AWS was first to, just brand
Right.
new, and there were other smaller cloud providers and stuff. And we started to create some products and expand some of our existing products through technology that enabled, it gave the sales team more stuff to go sell, which was
Right.
that was a lot of fun. Like
Yeah.
that was interesting to kind of make that shift and
Hmm.
actually be a start to help the business bring in some profit. Hey, you asked a question about, do I regret not doing coding early on?
Yeah. I kind of got went on a tangent there, but yeah, definitely. Because I guess my point was, when I first started out in tech, I started hanging around a lot of security infosec guys,
Oh, okay.
um, and they are the ones that like introduced me to Linux, and they were like learn TCP/IP, and they were like giving me hints on because I was super early in as far as really digging deep into tech. I had an interest in tech when I was really young. I was around 12, and I had
Nice.
actually gotten a Commodore 16, not a 64, but a 16. It was like a grade lower than the 64. Um, and I actually taught myself how to do some programming. It wasn't extensive, but I taught myself how to do some things in BASIC.
Nice.
But then my computer went on the fritz, and I got out of it. I did other things. I worked odd jobs. I did music for a while,
Yeah.
and then I slowly got back into computers. And when I got back into it, that's when I worked at the retail store. That's when I started hanging out with different people, and they were attending these 2600 meetings, the hacker meetings, right?
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Nice.
they were like super intelligent people, and so I was learning at that time more of the system side of it, and some of them had been educated at in academia and things like that, so they had that programming um, skill in their arsenal. And at that time, I never really picked it up. I never really picked it up until the past, I would say, 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay.
Um, but before that, it was just strictly, systems admin, point click, that type of thing. I didn't write a ton of scripts. And now I look at it, I'm like, man, I wish I would have really started with programming, at least to some degree, and then slowly transition to the systems. That way I would have had that knowledge years ago, instead of just kind of picking it up recently. So
Yeah, no, I think we share like similar stories there, right? So,
right.
when I started, I didn't want to go down the coding path because I just was like, man, that's going to be boring, right? And the sysadmin stuff seems super interesting. I
Right,
don't,
right.
I don't regret it, and I'll explain why, and I'll explain like if I could make a change, what I would make. I
Hmm.
don't regret it because focusing on system administration and more the infrastructure and the networking side made me get really deep into things like DNS and like TCP/IP
Yes.
and the OSI model and all of
Yes.
those core things that are extremely relevant in cloud. Like when I'm working in cloud, there are things that I know that when I'm working alongside a person that comes from a dev background, like
Yeah.
they don't they don't understand fundamental things about DNS that I do, right? And they
Right.
don't understand fundamental things about, certain networking aspects or other like protocol type things that I
Right.
understand because of the background that I come from. Now,
Yeah.
can they bang out a script a lot faster? Can they, when it comes to writing something from scratch, do they know for loops and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, they're
Yeah.
faster. They know that, but I know things that help augment and bring to the table and show value too. Now, going
Right.
back, what I do wish I did more of was just doing more stuff from the command line versus going straight down the GUI route with Windows, right? Like I
Yeah.
did some Linux with my Linux Plus, and I've always done some open source. I've always sprinkled that in throughout my career, the
Right.
entire
Right.
time. But I wish I would have spent more time in the command line and yeah, doing more scripting.
Right.
I still to this day don't want to be a peer developer, but I would like to have my coding skills get deeper, and they are getting deeper. Like you, over the past 6, 7 years or whatever, I've intentionally done more coding, and I pretty much live in the command line, right? When I'm working with like Kubernetes and stuff and doing Docker stuff, I'm doing all that through command line. And I'm also working with like PowerShell and Ansible and Terraform. All that stuff is coding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's a good point that you made about you have a deeper knowledge of some of the even I would say more of the lower level components of tech, right?
yeah,
Um, the same way. Like even on a current team that I'm on, they always refer to me as like, oh, you want to know about some networking? Ask Greg because he's the net. Like, because the rest of the team are made up of developers
there you
that just
go.
happen to now they're now working on DevOps projects, and now they're still sharp. And they they pick up the DevOps stuff and operational stuff, and they're still sharp. But there's certain things like they'll ask me, oh, this what is this subnet, or what is this whatever DNS or whatever. So yeah, I do like the fact that I started from that point, and then progressed into learning development. But there's always this, I don't know how there's always seems to be like this like developers, they have a different way of looking at things, and
Definitely.
it's something that over the years I've started to develop. I didn't initially have that, but I see it, and that's what makes me like, oh, I wish I would have started coding a lot earlier. That way I could have had that level of insight that developers possess, simply because they look at problems a lot differently,
Yeah,
right?
that's spot on. And I've taken on that mindset too, and I understand
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. So like if I have to do a task, right, or some sort of effort, I will
Yeah.
break it down into smaller pieces. Like if I have to
Right.
write some code to do some sort of automation, I'll
Yeah.
break it into sections and write those and bring it all together, that sort of thing. And just
Right.
kind of look at, the overall picture and slice it up. One of the
Right.
things that I did to help me ramp up on DevOps is Microsoft had a course. I don't think they have these anymore, but it was like a DevOps. It was the DevOps course. It was kind of their equivalent of a master class. And this
Okay.
thing was intense, man. It took me like a month to get through, or maybe a
Mm.
month and a half. And it was like a 3-month program, and it's basically college courses. And it
Oh
takes you
wow.
through the nuts and bolts of DevOps, from like, even it gets into, application lifecycle management stuff, right? And it gets into application performance monitoring and like all this stuff. So that brought me into like CI/CD pipelines and started to teach me developer mindset. And this program was like, you go through the course or each module, which was basically a class, and then you had to do labs, and then you had to take a test, and you couldn't continue on until you passed that. And then at the end of all of it, you had to do a capstone project, and then after that, you got a certificate. So and I paid for this myself, man. It was like $1,500 or something. Um,
Ooh,
but
okay.
but I was determined, right? I was determined, like, okay, I'm gonna go after this DevOps thing, and this is a way for me to do that, and a way for me to like really get educated and dive deep on this. And yeah, it was just amazing. I wish Microsoft still had those, but I think they discontinued those for something else.
Huh, interesting. That's not nice. I mean, that's a good segue into the next question, because you're now a director and Midwest Container Services lead. We'll talk about what that is on the cloud transformation DevOps team. So, for those who are listening and they're like, "What is cloud transformation? What is DevOps?" Kind of explain from your point of view what you feel cloud transformation and DevOps is.
Yeah, so so I work for Avanade, and Avanade is, you can basically consider Avanade the Microsoft arm of Accenture.
Mm-hmm.
So we're owned by Accenture and Microsoft, and
Okay.
Avanade has about, what are we at? I think 50,000 employees globally or something,
Wow.
and then Accenture is like, man, I don't know, like 500,000 employees globally or something. I mean, massive
Wow.
companies. But we're in the consulting space. So
Mm-hmm.
Accenture is one of the big consulting firms.
Right.
Um, so we're in consulting. So cloud transformation, what that means is we're doing transformational projects for clients around cloud. And since I'm with Avanade, we focus on Microsoft. So all my projects are primarily around Azure.
Okay.
So we do things like, SAP on Azure. So we're usually putting that in. We'll come into companies, we'll lay down the cloud foundations. So we're there early on, right? Putting in the
Mm-hmm.
architecture, and we're doing all this in code. We're doing it in ARM templates, or we're doing it in Terraform. And we're automating things, and we're setting up like management and security controls, for these cloud environments.
Right.
And the DevOps piece comes in because I get pulled into a lot of projects where, they need an operations person or they need an operations team to support the dev efforts, right? Or it might even be a pure DevOps project. Or in more recent times, I've been involved in a lot of Kubernetes and container projects, right? More specifically, like Azure Kubernetes Service, so AKS on Azure. Um, and if you know about like AKS, if you know about Kubernetes, there's a lot of, typically like developers use it, so they deploy stuff to it, but it's operational slash infrastructure people. We have to run it, and we're typically deploying it, and there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into that, right?
Right. Oh
And
yeah.
so I cross over between those teams, and at the director level. So I do a lot of things, and in consulting, like, your role can change from project to project. So I'll go in and I'll lead teams of people, onshore, offshore. I'll work on with teams inside of the US. Sometimes there'll be global teams. I'll work in very large projects and head up a work stream, and then sometimes, depending on the size of the project, I might even be an individual contributor, right? So there's, like, in consulting, there's a lot of variety and a lot of different things you do, and you learn a lot and you expand a lot. and it's awesome because you're typically working cutting edge, right? Instead of working on like,
Yeah.
I'm not working on NT4 servers, right? Or like, server 2016 or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
working in cloud on cutting edge stuff. And I love
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah. I can definitely vouch for that with consulting companies because as you know, Steve, and for those out there that don't know, I've been working at a consulting company for the past year and a half, and it's like it's in Azure, and it's pretty much the cutting edge stuff of what the cloud is doing. It's a lot of stuff around IoT, so we're doing IoT hub stuff, IoT edge
Nice.
stuff. A lot of stuff around automation. We're using a lot of Azure services and, like this Azure Service Bus. We're using
Nice. Nice.
API Manager for things. It's just the AK. We're using AKS as well. So we're using a ton of stuff for that project. But I do want to I want to touch on what you said about the operational side of it. That's really true. Especially people think that because Microsoft or AWS, they offer a service around Kubernetes, that you just kind of like, hey, I want the service, click it, and let's go. And there's so much more underneath in setting up, especially with Kubernetes and setting up, the security side of it. So role
Spot on.
bindings, all that stuff. Just the networking portion of it. You have to set up all the subnets and all the namespaces, and there's a lot of operational stuff around Kubernetes that you have to set up. So it's not, even though it's cloud, and cloud is a lot of you're consuming a lot of services, there's still some operational stuff behind the scenes that needs to be done in order for developers to just want to just come in and consume it and for their needs. We put together these services behind the scenes. We stitch all this stuff together and then present it to the developers to make the developers' lives that much easier, right?
So
there's a lot.
That's
There's a lot that goes into it. Go ahead.
That's spot on. And like Kubernetes is a prime example. Going back to our earlier conversation, Kubernetes is a prime example of, us starting out as sysadmins and network people and having those skills and bringing those skills to the table, right? Like when you have to set up like an ingress controller, you have to understand networking, and you have to understand like how traffic flows and kind of
Right.
understand, how all of that works. You might need to
Right.
set up DNS in front of that. You may have some sort of load balancer or,
Yeah.
app gateway with WAF
You know,
in front of that. And like there's all this networking stuff that goes into a huge, like massive DevOps technology, in this day and age. And so as an operational infrastructure person, there's a lot of value that we bring to the table in the world of cloud and the world of DevOps. But also on the flip side of that, I'm working in Kubernetes, like AKS, all the time, and 98% of my time is spent in the command line, like working with YAML files and like Helm charts, all this stuff, right? So it's like, the better I can be at coding, the faster I can be.
yeah.
So it's very interesting. And I think it's important for those out there that are trying to decide what direction to go in your career. Like, it's good to have a healthy mix of core infrastructure skills. And then
Right.
also it's good to have a healthy mix of like coding skills as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because whenever I talk to anyone about a career path or anything like that, I start with, hey, what do you like to do, right? To kind of assess like what path might suit them best. Sometimes and even with networking, like even that stuff is becoming more codified nowadays.
Oh yeah.
And so I try to tell people like, hey, these are some of the core things that you need to learn because it'll give you that foundation to build upon. but definitely find some way to slip in coding. I don't care if it's Bash. I don't care if it's PowerShell. I don't care if it's Python or whatever. Find some way to slip in the language in there, just so that you have at least a grasp of coding methods, right? Because that's a huge thing. Like people get even with me, like I got confused coming out because I didn't understand coding methodology. Why you did certain things when you did it, or when you needed to do it. And so I tell people to like get that baseline of coding methodology under their belt, so that when they're dealing with these tools, even now, Terraform is turning out to be its own code language now, right? Like now they've introduced for loops and for each loops and all this new stuff, right? So they're really transition from this kind of, I don't want to say static, but it wasn't nearly as mature when it first started out, and now there's a lot more coding methodologies inside of Terraform. And the same way with some of these other configuration management tools like Ansible. And so it's good to have like that foundation of at least like, oh, I know what a for loop does. I know what a while loop does. I know what data structures are, those types of things. And even like nowadays, because everything is like API driven, the cloud is API driven, Kubernetes is API driven. All these things are API driven, so you need to have a good foundation in coding in order to progress your career in something like DevOps, because that's how we're interacting with all these platforms now. It's through code.
That's spot on. Something I always wonder about is for people that are coming from the other side of the table, right? Coming from that developer background. Are they doing the same thing that we're doing? Are they ramping up on core infrastructure, like skills and just understanding? Like we need, coming from the infrastructure side, we have to ramp up on like, okay, what are for loops? What are, variables and all that, like data structures, and it can be super confusing when you're new to that. You're like, why do I need that? What is this? How do I accomplish this task? Like, I wonder if it's the same for folks coming from the other side, from that dev world, when they have to, like, okay, they've built this thing, but now they got to publish it and secure it, like, back it up and monitor it.
My experience with that is they learn as little as they need to. If they don't need to know it, they will not mess with it at all. This is what but some of the really, really smart ones, right? They have an understanding, a deeper understanding of some, even so we have a lead on our team, and the guy is just extremely sharp. Like he has like so much capacity to just soak things in and remember it. Like his recall is incredible, right? But even he has to at times like ask me about networking stuff. Like, so he'll understand like the baseline part of it, but then if it gets deeper than that, like then he'll have to ask questions. And that's kind of what, like with everything, like if they have to deal with DNS, they deal with unless they have to get deeper, they only deal with like the surface of it at the time, because normally they wouldn't have to deal with a lot of that stuff. Right. Now as DevOps engineers, they find themselves immersed a little bit more into the infrastructure side. But like I said, I would say I'm out of all the DevOps people on my team, I think there's only two of us that come from an infrastructure background. Everyone else are developers, and they only pick up on the infrastructure, the hardcore infrastructure part of it when they need to.
That's
other than that, they're not like, I've never seen them come in with like a Networking Plus book and like and crack it open trying to things like that. So yeah.
That's super interesting. Something else I've observed on my DevOps journey is that I've found it infrastructure people have been slower to make that transition.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of infrastructure people are like, man, I don't want to learn coding. I don't want to do that. You know, like give that to
Yeah.
those devs. And it's just it's been interesting. It's slowly starting to change with with things that are popular like Terraform. I see infrastructure people more interested in that. It started to shift a little bit with PowerShell and stuff like that, but it's still, it's been harder to get infrastructure people to make that jump.
Yeah. And I think some of that goes back to infrastructure people. They're doing infrastructure because they didn't want to do coding.
Right, right.
They didn't initially want to do coding, so they started out. They did infrastructure, and now they're finding like, oh, now these worlds are really converging
Right, right.
with the cloud, and so and then they're still reluctant because a lot of them they get set in their ways and things like that. But what they at least I hope they're starting to understand is if you don't learn it, you're going to be phased out of a job pretty quickly, right? Like there's
Yeah.
not a ton of I mean, there's still jobs out there for straight infrastructure people, but as more and more companies start, and even internally, right? You have companies spinning up their own Kubernetes clusters, and
Right, right,
and
right.
and you want to bring in, Terraform is not just for the cloud. Like you can use Terraform with VMware. You can
Right,
use
right.
Terraform on a number of different SaaS platforms. So now it's becoming a little bit more prevalent in almost every environment now, and people are now wanting that level of automation. And so now sys engineers, sysadmins are now saying like, oh, this is something that either we do or we die out. So
I think, once more and more infrastructure people start to cross over, I think they'll get the bug. That happened to me. Even at this point, like whenever I have to work with a virtual machine, I start to get a little sad. And I'm like, can't we just do this on a container or throw it on some PaaS service? Like once
right,
once you start doing things like most of the time in the command line, and then when you see how fast things can come online, like a web server like Apache Tomcat in a container, and the flexibility you have, and even in PaaS services, it's like, man, I don't want to go back to the world of VMs.
I know. I have a friend, and they work in an environment that's still physical hardware and things like that, and
Oh
they'll
man,
tell me
I'm
about.
sorry for your
I'm
friend.
just like, I don't even know what that's like. Like, what is it?
Right, right.
The last time I actually logged into a server, like it's been like forever. Like we don't log into servers anymore. Like I don't even know how to.
Exactly.
Like hooking, connecting your laptop to a server. What does that mean?
Yeah,
I
what
haven't
is
touched.
that
I
like?
haven't touched physical hardware in years now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I recently I recently had to spin up a domain, like domain controllers, like like load Active Directory and like do the DC promo and go through all of that, right? Join the servers to the domain. And when I'm doing all this, I'm like, wait, how do you do that? Like I had to go back and remember, and it was like, why is this taking so long?
yeah. It's so fun. Like when it comes to something like that, like I forget stuff that if I haven't done it, like
Oh yeah.
I just flat out forget it. Like there's so many other things that I'm concentrating on. It's like if I haven't done it in some years, like you can pretty much bet that I'm about to go to Google and try to try to figure it out. Like I know I've done it before, but it's been so long. So Yeah. I'm in the same boat, man. And I haven't done anything like, man, DC promo. Like I did that
Yeah,
like years ago in the lab, and that was
yeah,
like
exactly.
the last time I've ever done anything like that. So
See
tell me,
that's
go ahead.
going back, man. It's like
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Tell us how did you get to the director level? Like, what was that journey like?
like a lot of years of just putting in my time. And also just like in the world of IT, and I mean, this, and this is not ideal, but usually when you are looking for the promotion or to move up in your career, you got to jump ship. And it'd be better if like companies would do more promotion within, so that employees could stay around, and you move jobs. What you do different things to keep a variety. But to be honest with you, man, like early on in my career, and about like maybe midway through, you know, I had to jump ship to get that promotion or to go to that next level. You get those skills, you gain those skills through whatever means, whether it's training on the job, whatever, and then you go to that next role at that next company. Because what I've seen in the past is a lot of companies, they just, for whatever reason, there's a roadblock to getting that promotion. Now, more recently, in my last role, I was a director. And then in my current role, I came in as a group manager and got promoted to a director. And I think it was more just about coming in and proving that I could handle the director level, responsibilities, and coming in and proving that, okay, I can lead efforts, I can lead teams, I can, you know, direct people and get projects done and things like that. So it's actually, I was able to get promoted within a 2 year, I think it was 2 years, 2 year time frame up to that director level. And I'll tell you, man, it was not easy. I can't tell you the ins and outs of the process, but what I can tell you, the the promotional process was kind of like being on Shark Tank.
Really?
Yeah, it was interesting, man. So you really had to, present your case, like, okay, what, give examples of things that you've done to help move the organization forward and clients. It really did feel like that, which I can appreciate that, because once you achieve that through that process, it's like, wow, I really had to work for this.
Yeah, and I like what you said earlier about sometimes you have to jump ship. Like I think a lot of people, I'm not even going to say a lot of people, but nowadays this the idea, at least how our parents did it,
Yep.
staying at a company for umpteen years, like that's not the ideal way of doing it now, especially in tech. Like just within the past, I would say 3 or 4 years, I've been at like three jobs, right? Like
Yeah.
there's and it's becoming a lot more of the norm in technology, where you stay at a company for a few years, and whether, I mean, it's kind of a rule of thumb now. Like if you aren't getting your salary increased by so much, or you aren't getting promoted, it's time to go, right?
Yeah.
And the important thing about that I want to stress to people is, don't feel like you need to be loyal to these companies. I mean, if they treat you good, that's cool, but you're providing a service to them, and they're paying you for it, right?
That's
Uh,
spot on.
and, and and whenever it comes to that time where they're not paying you what they should be for your service, or they're not recognizing you for the work that you've done, it's time to jump ship. It's time to move on and go and get what you deserve to get. So
Now, one of the things that so everything you said there was spot on. Something that I've noticed, so like I was, most of my career I was internal IT. And when I
mhm,
was internal IT, I had to do that a lot, as I was kind of moving up to
right.
that IT manager. Once I hit that IT manager, it was like, okay, what's next? And I took took a shot at consulting, and I've been in consulting ever since.
Hmm.
Who knows if I'll stay in consulting or go back internal? Don't really know what the future holds, but
Right.
I have noticed that smaller consulting companies, the tenure is shorter, and at where I'm at now, which is a very very large organization, the tenure on average team seems to be very very long, right? So we have
Mm.
people that have
Yeah.
been around for like 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, but
Yeah.
you'll see promotion among those people
Yeah.
on those different, in those different roles. So I think
Yeah.
there is still some of that, but it depends on the company.
And yeah, I do want to. I want to piggyback on that because I work at a consulting company, as I mentioned earlier, and there are people there that have been there 9, 10 years, 15 years, and I think consulting is a different beast, and it is in a couple of ways. The technology that you work with from year to year is usually pretty different, right? Like even if you are working with some of the same platforms, you're not working the same problems all the time, right? So that's very, very enticing for someone who has a penchant for learning and being curious. It's that this project I'm working on something that involves IoT and IoT, and next one might be something totally different. It might be all Kubernetes stuff, right? So that mix right there is what keeps people enticed. The other part of it is that
Definitely.
it's almost working, even when you work with the consulting, it's almost like you're working for a different company, like every project, right? Because you are,
Yeah, you really are.
and so people, they go into these environments, and now the leadership is different, right? The project scope is different, the environment is different. Your coworkers might even be different. So there's enough change within that to I guess kind of satisfy a person, wanting to leave for, maybe they would just want to change up jobs, change up scenery. So there's enough change in consulting that kind of satisfies that. And the last thing I'll say about that is consulting is what it is. It makes money by consulting. And so if you are good at what you do, they want to keep you, and they will keep you by giving you more money because then, and promoting you, because then now you're that much more valuable to the company, right? Because now they can spec you out for so much per hour, right? And so they consulting companies, they tend to recognize and value their employees a lot more than other companies, simply because of that. You go into it, you do a good job, and now you're, for instance, the project that I'm on, when I came into this consulting, this is my first consulting role. The second day I was there, I was on a project, and it just happened to be one of the biggest projects in the company, right?
Nice.
It was working. It was working with Microsoft. It was working with a huge retail organization. It was working with Dell, and so this was like our eyes were on this project. So once you get in, and then you start working, and people start hearing that you're doing good work, now they want, once you come off that project, they want you on their project. Or now that you have that type of notoriety and that name for yourself, they want you for this new project because you were doing some cutting edge stuff, so you know some stuff now. So they value you, it seems to me, a lot more than a regular company would.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. Like in consulting, um, the people of that consulting firm are the product, right? So there's definitely some pros that come along with that. Like consulting companies will have budgets for training, and they really mean it. They need you to be trained on the newer technologies because you're being
Yes.
sold in the marketplace. They value certifications. So usually having budget for certifications is not a big deal. And then
Right.
every time you start a new project, it's like starting a new job. And so that
Yes.
can keep it interesting and keep the variety there so that, things don't get stale. The other thing with consulting is that, yeah, like you're saying, you do good on a project and more people want you, and the companies do want to retain you, and you start to build your own brand,
Yeah.
right? Even
Yep.
within that consulting world. So there's definitely pros to consulting. There are some cons too. But
Yeah.
there,
They definitely.
and you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But there are a
Yeah.
lot of pros, so
Yeah. Yeah. I've been fortunate to have to be working with a team that everybody on the team is super sharp, and they're super helpful, and no one has egos and things
oh,
like
that's
that.
big.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
when you can be around, when you can be a part of an IT team where no one has egos, that's huge, because what I've seen over my career in IT is the IT ego thing it can be a huge problem in certain environments and create toxic environments, and that really makes the day-to-day job suck when you're working around people that have egos and stuff, and it's like, man, we're all learning. We're all at different levels. No one knows everything. Like,
yeah.
so,
And shout out to to my my team lead. I mean, we have a number of guys that are just like, wow. And they never flex like that, right? They never feel like they're above anyone else. And even if they know that a lot of people come to them for questions and things like that, they take the time out and they say, hey, oh, let's go to a whiteboard. Let me draw it out. And if you don't get it, right? If you don't get it the first time, the people on my team will apologize and say, let me explain. I'm sorry. Like, if I'm not explaining this correctly, let me explain this in a little bit more simpler form, so that, they don't do it to to be condescending. But they recognize that, if they're talking over your head or anything like that, they know how to dial it back and say, okay, I need to make this more digestible or more easily digestible by this person. And they'll bring it back and they'll say, hey, this is my fault. This is like a bug in the system, right? There's a gentleman, oh man, I can't even remember his name, but he invented Logstash, Jordan Sissel.
okay.
Invented Logstash, which is part of the Elk Stack. If anyone is wondering what I'm talking about, that's Elasticsearch,
Yes.
Logstash, and Kibana. But his thing was, if you don't understand it, then it's a bug in the system. We're not explaining it well enough, right? That's how he feels, and that's how people on our team, that's how they behave. If you don't understand it, if I'm explaining it and you still don't get it, then I'm not doing a good job. It's not you, it's me. And they'll try to, like I said, they'll try to find a way, at least for you to grasp it a lot easier. So.
That's awesome, man. It's always great to have a good team, and throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working with some extremely smart people, and majority of the people I've worked with have been awesome people, and especially the folks that I work with now. It's, yeah, a good team, and also having good leadership makes a world of difference.
Yeah, it makes you, okay with coming into work, right?
It does, yeah.
What's up, everyone? We hope that you're enjoying this episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast. Do you or someone you know have a dope story that they want to share with our bit audience? Blacks in Technology is seeking guests to be on our podcast. We're looking to highlight the journeys and experiences of Black women and men in the tech industry. So if you know of someone, send them our way. Shoot us an email to contact us at blacksintechnology.net, or click on the link in the show notes and fill out our form. We're looking to hear from you. To you, let's talk a little bit about, you're an 8-time Microsoft MVP. What is a Microsoft MVP? And then tell us how you went about achieving that 8 times.
Yeah, so the MVP program with Microsoft, it's an award, it's not a certification. So like you can't take a test to get it. It's an annual award, which means you're not guaranteed to have it every single year. You have to be renewed by a committee. Don't really know who the committee is. You don't know. It's a committee
Right,
inside of Microsoft, and they decide if you're in or you're not.
right.
Um, Within the MVP program, once you're awarded, you get some benefits like you get to go out to the Microsoft campus in Redmond, Washington.
Mm,
Typically once a year, they have an MVP summit, and you get to go there and meet with the product groups. Those are the folks that are writing the software or developing the services on Azure. You get to
right.
sit in a room with them and like give your honest, open feedback. And then also they're soliciting you for feedback around new features and stuff that's coming. It's very locked down. Like there's, we got to sign NDAs and stuff, so we can't talk about anything.
Okay.
Um, but they're serious about it, man. I mean, I've been at MVP summits where like we get a notification where an MVP is, they got to leave because
Oh,
they
wow.
they leaked information or something. But you got to remember you're being given special access, right, to company information and in a competitive marketplace. So you got to treat that as such, right? It is critical. Um, but you meet with these teams and in fact you build relationships and friendships with these folks. It's actually amazing. And then you meet with other MVPs from around the world and you build friendships with them too. I have friends
Nice.
from all over the world. For example, Sam, who came to the first BitCon, right? He's from the UK, Sam
Okay.
Ernstine. And I met him through the community and through the MVP program and stuff like that. And he's an MVP as
Nice.
well. But and then we get some other benefits too. Like we used to get licensing to Microsoft software. Now we get like $1,000 a month credit on Azure, which is amazing, right? Because
Wow. Right.
when I need to deploy like AKS clusters and test all this stuff, right, or deploy other stuff, I actually have some budget to work with. Um,
Nice.
but so you get some really cool benefits like that. And to get into the program, basically you got to be an expert in basically one of the Microsoft, areas around their products or services. For example, I'm an Azure MVP, but they
Okay.
also have like Office 365 MVPs. They have Xbox
Gotcha.
MVPs.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, I'm thinking about converting over to that so I can get some free swag. But um, you
How many gaming hours did you have to put in for that?
yeah, I'd like to know because I actually want to know how do you become an Xbox MVP. But
Right.
and you know what? When you go out to the campus, you never see those folks. Like I swear they go off to a secret building that's probably got windows blacked out and all that. Like
Right. Right.
top, super top secret, right? Um, but
See somebody getting out of a car with a some type of covering over
blindfold,
their head,
yeah.
getting led in.
But so you become like an expert in a certain area, and then you become a community champion, right? So you're doing things like blogging or speaking, writing books, just doing
Right.
whatever you can to help out the community around that technology. And if other MVPs or Microsoft recognizes your contributions to the community, you might make it into the program. But I want to be clear that like it's I definitely encourage people to go for becoming an MVP,
Hmm.
but just don't let that like make or break you whether you get in or not. Because I've seen people work really hard at it and they do all the community type activities and they're doing amazing things in their space and sometimes you just don't make it in, right? But don't let that discourage you from doing what you're doing. Just if you want to help the community and like give back, like do it out of wanting to do that, not out of,
Right.
hey, I want to achieve this thing. Because
Yeah.
trust me, like Microsoft, they can see through the genuine folks that are doing it for, genuine reasons, and they can see
Right.
right through folks that are like just trying to get that title, right?
Right, right. Yeah, that's always been a thing, especially with any type of like certification or accolade. Like there's always this thing where it's like, oh, are you just a certification person, or are you a person that really wants to understand and learn the technology behind it and get the cert because of your knowledge? So that's always been an ongoing thing in tech. But that's another good segue into the next question, because obviously there's a lot of, to be at the level that you're at as a director, to be in the Microsoft 8-time MVP, uh, and to be in a game, so to speak, for this long. There's a lot of learning that's involved, and I'm always fascinated, at least especially with the people that I admire, whether it's somebody on my team or somebody I read about. And especially when people are on my team, like I like to pick their brains and find out, like, how do you learn? Like, what's your regimen for learning something new? So I want to pose that question to you. Like, what's your regimen for learning a new technology?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I share the same thing where I like to learn how people approach that as well. For me, when I'm setting out to learn something, um, I'll go out and I'll read a bunch of articles online about it, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'll usually buy a book or two or three, depending on what it is and how
Right.
complex it is. But I'll dive into
Right.
some books, and then I like to get my hands on. So if it's in cloud, I'm deploying it, I'm breaking it, I'm redeploying it, I'm configuring it. If it's an on-premises thing, I still have a half rack in my house, and I have
Nice.
a I have a physical server in my house. So if I need to
Right.
deploy something, I still have that, right? In fact, I have some other servers too that I actually need to do something with, get rid of them. But I like to get my hands on it. And then sometimes, like, after I get my hands on it, I'll go back and reread, or I'll read another book or some more articles about it so I can understand it at a deeper level. And I may even, watch some videos, because I want to hit it from all those angles so I can really
Right.
understand it. It's one thing when you read about something, and it's a different thing when you go and you do it. And then I always find, like, after I do something, after I configure it, if I go back and I read about it again, then I'm learning, like, why. I'm learning about the why. Something component works that way, or you want to do it this way or that way. So I try to, like, combine those things to get that full 360.
And this is a person, I don't know if you've ever seen this person in Slack, but I want to shout out to Henry McKelvey, because I remember when I first started Bit, he was one of the original members of Bit at the time, and he said something very interesting. He was like, "Man, I wish they would bring back, like, the real apprenticeship programs, and I wish they would do
Yeah.
certifications in a different way, because apprenticeship programs, like, they would bring you in, you would work under like the tutelage of someone, and then after you worked on that, then they would send you to go and take a certification. It wasn't, because nowadays you can go and just study for it and then go and take the cert and pass the cert, and that's it. But he said it solidifies it a lot more. We're able to work on the technology, and then circle back and read about it, and then it starts to crystallize a lot more, right? Because now you see where some of the ins and outs of what you were doing, how that all comes together, right? And then it starts to make a lot more sense. And I think that's based on what you were just telling me, that's kind of what your methodology. You read, but then you go do, and then you go back and you read, and then it starts to crystallize for you. Like, oh, okay, that's how this works, or that's why this works. And I think that's a very important thing that people should take away from it, because don't be one of those people that just goes out there and read and then think that you're the IT god or whatever. Like it takes this hands-on knowledge, because that hands-on stuff is what brings that wisdom, right? Um,
Yeah,
you can
definitely.
read
And
to get the knowledge, but the experience and the wisdom comes from actually doing it.
yeah, definitely. And that's spot on. And that's why I was a big fan. I'm still a big fan of the Microsoft professional program. They retired that, but that was the program I was telling you about where I did the DevOps through. And it was structured that way. It was almost like, okay, you had to do the learning, the reading, the videos, and then you had to do a test, and then you had to do a lab at the end of each module to make sure you actually learned it. And then there was a full capstone at the end of the entire program. And I believe like certifications should actually convert over into that, because by the end of that, like I knew, like there was no way I didn't know, new stuff, like and actually knew what I was doing. Um, versus, you go take a multiple choice test, and it's kind of like, well, are you good at taking tests? If you are, you could probably pass this, right?
Yep, yep, yeah, I agree. I agree. So let's get into a little bit about you being an author, you being a blogger, you being a speaker. Um, and those are some things that there's people out there who are maybe just getting started in tech, or been in it for a few years, and this is something that they aspire to do. I definitely know, like when I started out, like I would never have dreamed that I would speak at any of the conferences that I was attending. Like I was just like, these people are just they're just out of this stratosphere, right? And they're so
Right.
smart. Uh, and then lately I've been speaking at least one or two conferences a year, the past few years. So, um, and so I want to hear from you. Like, how did you? I want a few questions here. Like, how did you begin speaking? Like, what got you into speaking? And then, like, what's your process for developing a good presentation? Like, how do you prepare for that?
Okay. So the first time, so I started speaking really when I got into consulting. And so I got into consulting, and shortly after that I was awarded the Microsoft MVP in cloud and data center. It was really around system center. As soon as that happened, like I started getting pulled into, like some pre-sales. I started getting pulled into like, speaking at company events and stuff. And I was like, man, I'm not a speaker. I don't want to do this. But um, at the same time, like you don't grow if you're not challenged, right? If you're sitting in a comfortable spot. So I gave it a shot. I started doing that. And then fast forward, my first time speaking at an actual conference was at MMS. And my friend Sam Ernstine, he's like, hey man, I got a session. Me and another guy, you should be a co-speaker with us. You don't have to worry about it. Like get up there and just try it out. Like we got you, and it's you'll do great. You got like a good speaking voice and stuff like that. So I did it, and it went well, and I actually ended up with a few sessions that year. And then it just kind of grew from there, right? The next thing was like Microsoft Ignite, and again I was nervous there. And then next thing you know, it's just like all these conferences. And like you, I usually speak, a couple of times a year, sometimes more, sometimes less. Um, and I still get nervous. You always have a level of being nervous, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
and
for
and
sure.
I think if you don't get a little bit nervous, it's like, well, when you get nervous, it's like because you care, you want to make sure that you're doing a good job and you're delivering, something excellent. At least that's how it is for me. And so I still get nervous sometimes, even though I've presented a lot at this point. Um, and as far as like developing a good like session, I try to tell a story. I try to lay out an outline. I also I don't memorize my content. Like I know my content, but I don't memorize it line for line. I just know I use it as an outline and I know what I'm going to say, but I want to get up there and be conversational, right? Um and I want it to be more organic and not like I'm a robot just like reciting reciting some content, right? So I try
Yeah.
to make sure I'm doing that. So when I'm putting together like a presentation, it's usually like an outline of what I want to say. And then I try to mix in demos, more more than one, and just try to make sure like, okay, if I'm talking about a technology, then I'm showing it off. And I've done some presentations too that are non-technical. Like I did one actually at the first BitCon on how to become a tech influencer. And with that, I really pulled from my story and then just pulled from like stories from people that I know and kind of their journey. And I really tried
Right.
to come up with a formula that anyone sitting in that audience could use so they could go out and become a tech influencer. And then in that session too, it was amazing because I met Shauna Hughes at
Yep.
the first BitCon, found out she's a Salesforce MVP, and shout out to her. She agreed to join my session and tell her story as well. Um,
Nice.
so it was more of like kind of a conversation and both of us telling our stories and our journeys. And and I think when you take speaking from that standpoint, it just comes more natural.
Yeah, I have to say, I agree with you 100%. And it's I did that like when I first started speaking. I had this thing where I was supposed to speak about blacks and technology and the reason why we exist, blah blah blah. And man, this was like my real first speaking thing,
Okay.
and I scripted out everything. The problem with scripting is if you forget one line, it will mess up everything after,
Yeah, it throws you
right?
off.
It throws you completely off. And I did that, and I was stumbling. I felt terrible, even though people came up to me later. It was like, "Oh no, we couldn't even tell," but right? And
Yeah,
and from then on out, I was just like, "I'm never doing that again." Like it has to just flow and come from the. And ever since that one time, man, I was just like, "All right, I need to just be myself. I don't need to be like pre-recorded or anything like that. I just need to just let it all flow out. I know my stuff, so just let that knowledge come out. Do it in a conversational tone, like you said, and put your personality into it, and you'll be fine."
It's kind of like freestyling.
Yeah, it is
It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like freestyling, but um versus having everything written down.
written. Yeah, because if you have everything written, and even if you're let's just say, I'm guessing you're talking about like rapping.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's just say if you're rapping and you forget a line, like that messes up everything.
it does. Yeah.
But when you're freestyling and it's not written, it's all off the top of the head. Any mistake you can recover from because you're freestyling anyhow, right?
Yeah, and if you're freestyling, if you make a mistake, you just kind of roll with it and
Right,
you take it somewhere else. And so
right.
and no one knows. It's like
No one knows. No one's the wiser.
so
Yeah.
I guess
So
this is funny. You help me like if I ever have to explain this in the future, I'm just gonna say, my style of speaking is freestyling.
excellent, excellent. So, um, tell us how you got into writing and blogging. Like, how did you start your own your blog? You're author of what, six technical books? Like, how did that all happen?
Yeah, six technical books, and then I'm a official tech reviewer on like six more.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so it started out of a desire for me to give back to the tech community at large, right? Like I've told this story sometimes too, a few times too, and like when I was a sysadmin at one point in my career, I remember I had like this terrible like problem that I ran into, and I'm trying to figure it out, and it'd been a day or so. And you know how it is when you get stuck on something, man, you start searching. And
Right.
at the time, this was a product that was like pretty new to the market. So yeah, there was documentation from Microsoft, but it was pretty limited, to be honest. And there wasn't a lot of people that had deployed this technology yet. And I found like one forum, a forum thread where like one guy, I swear, out of the whole world, one guy ran into the same issue, right? And he put the solution in there, and I'm thinking, you know, this guy gave back by putting it out there, and others are giving back by blogging and stuff, and that inspired me to start a blog. And then so I've been blogging ever since, and my blog is like a knowledge base for myself and
Right.
a knowledge base for anyone else that finds it useful, right? There might be useless information out there for others on some of the posts, but it's valuable to me because, like you said earlier, if you haven't worked on something for a long time and then you have to come back and work on it, you
Yeah.
forget some of the things that you had to do or configure.
Yep.
So I also started blogging to like document for myself, like, okay, I'm deploying this thing. I may not have to do this or touch this technology for the next 6 months.
Right.
But when I do, I know I can go search on my blog and find the steps or the config that I had to do to get this thing to work.
Right.
And it started helping other people too. And so, as far as writing books, like a publisher found my blog and they liked what I was doing, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do a book?" And so I did that, and that just led, like, once you do one book, man, like they want you to do more, and, and it just, it just kind of snowballed from there. My recent books, I actually was gonna stop doing tech books because honestly, you don't make a lot of money from them. Uh, but the intangible benefits that you get, like it can help skyrocket your career, right? So it pays like 10, 20 fold, but it just comes in a different form. But I was going to stop doing books, and then this huge shift to cloud, and I seen a couple of gaps in books around like Azure Stack, and then Azure Kubernetes Service. So those are the two latest books. And just saw an opportunity to really share and give back to the community on what I know and what my co-authors knew around those technologies, right?
Nice.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? A lot of people, I don't even know if a lot of people know this, but I say it every once in a while, but Blacks in Technology started as a blog.
okay,
If you go to blacksintechnology.wordpress.com, you will see the the first instantiation of Blacks in Technology. It was just me blogging.
nice,
I came from a Linux conference, and I was like, you know what? There was absolutely no black speakers here, and I wasn't mad, but I just recognized that there wasn't. There were very few black attendees, and I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to do something. This is what led to Blacks in Technology. It's going to this conference and not seeing any black people there. So I was like, okay, what I'll do is I'll start blogging, just to get a name out there, right?
nice,
Just to kind of say like, hey, I'm black, I'm in tech, I do this, right?
nice.
And that's how it started. Not only can you build your own personal brand, but it helps with, especially if you're blogging and people start taking notice of your blog and things like that. It's going to help you with job opportunities and other opportunities that come. Like you said that you were able to write a book based off of someone coming to your blog. And I know not everyone has the knack to sit there and write and everything like that, but it's something that I've found that can really propel you and your career and your brand. And like I said, Bit started that way. I wish and we still have our blogs and our our posts and things like that. I want to get back into blogging and writing more tech stuff eventually for Bit. But yeah, I mean it's a definitely a powerful platform.
Yeah, like blogging, writing books, speaking, all of it is a tool. It's all a tool
Yeah,
to build your brand. And you know what? You know, I hear, every so often I hear like, oh, we can't, we want to hire more black people in tech, but we can't find them. And it's like, no, they're out there. We're out here,
yeah,
go to groups like Blacks in Technology, go to organizations like BDPA. But I also would like to see more black people writing books, blogging, speaking, getting out there and speaking, like apply to speak, submit to speak at conferences like Microsoft Ignite, like OzCon,
right,
like, all these different conferences. We need more of that. We need more black tech authors that are
yeah,
authoring technical books. A lot of us are in the field and we're doing amazing things, and like we have a lot of valuable information that could be shared.
right,
And
right.
I just, I'd like to see more of that. And there's room for it. There's definitely space. And
Oh yeah,
if you're thinking about doing that and you're just hesitating, like everyone is nervous. Like I was nervous when I first started my blog, and I was like, man, people are gonna, deep technical experts are gonna eat my blog up, right? They're gonna tell me I'm trash and like I don't know what I'm talking about. And I kind of felt the same thing with speaking. And the book, I'm like, man, people are going to tear this book apart. What if it's not deep enough? What if it's too deep? What if it's you know everyone has those questions, but you know what, everyone has value to add. We're all at different levels. Just get started. We need more black authors of tech books. We need more black speakers to be at these different conferences. I also help run a user group, an Azure user group.
hmm
We need speakers. We need black speakers at the user groups. We need them. We need more black people. We need more of us helping to organize these user groups and stuff. And doing that stuff will help deepen your skills too. Like when you have to speak about something or write a book about it, you're diving in deep because you want to make sure you know what you're talking about, right? So
yeah. I agree. I was hoping that we could have done it at BitCon 2019, but we weren't able to. And I'm hoping that the next BitCon we can do something like that. But I would love to have something like an author's, because I know people who have written books. They're either, some of them are more technical, some of them are more biographical. Some of them are more about career, career progression and branding. But we're out there, we're writing them, but it's not a ton of people, but there are people out there, and I would love to highlight them in some way
I'd love to see
to
that too. Like
yeah, to
that
have
would be
just like
amazing.
a boot, like a whole strip of tables where black authors are. You can go, you can buy a book and get it signed and just talk. Like that's, to me, that's, those types of things are very powerful, right? It's
Right.
not enough to be black in tech, and it's even more powerful when you put yourself out there and other people can see you, and they can admire you, and they can see what they want to be, right? And I think that's the key, that level of visibility. So being able to have a bunch of black authors who have written books and be able to present that to the conference, so people, I mean, that could be very powerful.
Yeah, that I'd love to see that, and especially to see that at something like BitCon and be able to meet other authors and just know, you know, who other
Right,
black authors are. Like that would
right.
be huge.
Before let's take a few minutes, and I know that we wanted to have an open segment where we wanted to talk about a couple of things. And so we were thinking about talking about how jobs in tech could lift people out of poverty, or how to make tech roles and tech appeal to Black youth.
If you look at tech and you look at what it's done for India, and there's so many people, like a lot of people in India, man, they live and breathe tech.
Yeah,
It's like they're just born and they're like super techs, right? But let's be honest, like it provides a ton of jobs. I think in the US, we still have a lot of economic issues, and we have parts of the US where there's a lot of poverty, in the Black community. There's a lot of poverty in different areas and stuff too. And I think that tech can be a tool, through jobs, through education and tech. It's a great career, and
right.
it can literally change someone's life. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
now, you know, now having the jobs available and stuff like that, and recruiting is one thing. You gotta educate. So I'd love to see, and there's a lot of programs and people that are already doing stuff in like inner cities, with underrepresented youth and stuff like that.
right,
But they're teaching them about tech, and that's great because that can spark that young person's interest and be a
right.
game changer for them. But we need to make sure those things are turning into jobs, right? And not just jobs. Like a job is okay. You can go work at this retail store, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's definitely a difference between a job and a career, and being in
Oh yeah,
tech can be a career. And both you and I know from personal experiences that you can do very well financially in tech. And
right.
so, I think if we just continue to educate the youth, but not just the youth, adults even, right?
Yeah,
People that want to make career changes and stuff like that, you know, going into tech can be huge. And look, there's always reports coming out about, oh, there's a shortage of talent in tech. There's a shortage of coders. You know, if those reports are true, let's expand tech from a job standpoint, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and just expand it in our communities where we can help each other, get on that career path. I mean,
right.
you want to take care of your family, be able to provide, get in tech. And then I'm not going to throw any numbers out, man, but you can make doctor, lawyer money. You can make, you can do pretty well in the tech industry. Um,
Right. And I'll take the others. I will throw out numbers out here because, and here's why. Like whenever I go, and I've talked to students before, but when I do, I tell them approximately how much I make. Right. I tell them that it's in the six figures. Right. They need to know that. And if I say, look, you can make, and I'm not saying you're going to start off making something like this, but
and
you
I think
can make.
that's key. I think that's key, right? Like people need to know, yeah, you can make six figures, but don't expect like your first month after you break into tech.
Right? No, that's not. That's usually not how it works, unless you're on some other stuff, and just you're just
Right.
that smart.
So
But
be patient and be persistent.
right, but you can get to the point to where you can make 110, 125, 150, and depending on where you live, even more than that
Yeah,
per year, right? So
definitely.
I like to tell people how much they can make, because that level of money, like you can start really, if you do it the right way, you can really start to generate something that you can at least pass down to. Because with that type of money, let's say you live off of a fraction of it, right, and then you use the other part of it to go buy property, or
Right.
invest in something. Right now you have your money working for you, and that's stuff that you can start passing down to your kids, or whoever, right? The other part of this that I think that we need to tackle is the brand of Black people in tech. And I think that it's starting to change. But when I first started out, it wasn't like that, right? Now you have, and what I mean by that is you have all these brands throughout life that you run into, especially in the Black community, right? You have the Black athlete, right?
Yep.
And you know, you might have in our case, like, you know, the Black tech person, right?
Yep.
But traditionally, or, you know, the Black entertainer, that's another one, right?
Yep.
Traditionally, the Black entertainer and the Black athlete, they get the shine because of the way that they're branded. They've always been branded and stuck straight into our face, right?
Right.
For a number of reasons, though, right? It's easy. Let's put it like this: it's easy to at least start. So if someone was like, "Oh, I want to be a basketball star," all you need is a basketball, and you go to your neighborhood court and you start working on it, right? It's even easy, with music to get started, right? Oh, I want to start like singing or rapping or whatever. All you need to do is pick up a book and start writing, or you start belting out notes and things like that, right? But with in tech, it's been a lot because you need, traditionally you needed a computer, right? And there's a certain level of education that you need in order to get in it that we weren't given early on, right? And because of that, the Black athlete, the Black entertainer has always been front and center in our culture. Something that you can see, and everybody wants to try to obtain and be that. And the Black technologist, however, look at how we get depicted, right? In movies and anything. Like look at for instance, if you want to go back, and I know, TV is fictional, but look at Steve Urkel. No one wanted to be like Urkel.
Right.
Everybody wanted to be like Stefan, though.
Right.
When he transformed into Stefan, everybody wanted to be like him, but no one wanted to be, because look how he's depicted.
Right.
Really awkward. Awkward with in conversation, awkward with people of the opposite sex, all that stuff.
And Black people in tech are not like that.
Right. And we're not, but that's what I mean. So we need people like you and me and others. We need to be protecting our brand and trying to highlight that brand as much as it was one of the I guess core principles of BIT is increasing that visibility, right? Because that's not how we are. We're not like you remember, I don't know if you ever seen Die Hard, but even that guy, like, that's not all of us. The whiz kid in Die Hard, he was Black, but he wasn't a Black person that people would look at and be like, oh, okay, that's how I'm going to be. No, that's not. But we are that though. But we are. Go ahead.
You bring up a good point. Like, if that's how Black people in tech are depicted in the media, and that's what the youth see.
Why would they want to be like that?
Right. They don't want to be like that. Right. And then on the flip side, they see, someone in the NBA being able to drive a nice car or whatever. And they see people in entertainment, and they, who do you think the youth is going to want to be like? So, yeah, right. you bring up a good point.
Yeah. So there's something to the brand that needs to, and which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start doing podcasts, why I wanted to start writing articles and things like that, because there's things that people, whenever I go in and talk to young people, I tell them that I used to do hip hop. Like I did hip hop for years. I love hip hop. I love sports. I love playing basketball. I tell them this. I'll say, I like to dress. I tell them this because you make what, let's nerd or geek. You make that. It's not the word that makes you. You have to take that and mold it into what you want it to be. And if
Right.
that's a fly dressing, person who loves hip hop, and then that's who you are, and bring that to the table.
Exactly.
I don't feel like people need to be confined in this box, and you don't in order to be in tech. And I think that's the image a lot of times that it gives off. It doesn't give that off though to white people, because
Right.
white people don't need to conform to any type of, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
They
Right.
some of them they may look like the stereotypical quote unquote geek or nerd, but a lot of them don't, right? And so I think that that's the type of branding that we need to have. We need to show folks that, hey, I'm from where you're from. I listen to the same music that you listen to. I may
Right.
watch the same things that you listen to. I may enjoy a lot of the same things that you do. And I happen to be in tech. And you can too. You don't have to put those things aside in order to be in tech and do those things. Bring those things along with you, because that's what's going to really enrich the technology industry, right? Because you have certain insights and knowledge and background and experience that all these other white people out here, they don't
Don't have.
have.
So
And you bring that to the table. Go ahead.
so you're spot on, and I really like the points you're making about branding, and I think it's important for any of us that are in tech to really think about that as we're putting ourselves out there. And like, basically we need to make sure that anyone coming into tech knows that like it's okay to bring your whole self, right? We're not just like nerds. We are who we are, whether whatever you're into, and we're just like any other black person out there. And like I have always played ball. I still play ball, not as much anymore, 'cause, age, but you know, I've always been into playing ball. And in fact, I used to run a hip hop website, right?
Nice.
Where we
I think
where
you
we were
told me
doing
that.
a lot of stuff, and I was into like hip hop shows and stuff like that. I wasn't um the entertainer, but I was putting them on and stuff like that. And that was tied with the brand. And so, there are things that we like and that we're into, and a lot of us share the same things, the
Yep.
same interests, and we also share an interest in tech, and we're also in the tech field professionally. But yeah, there's a lot of us, we're into hip hop, we're into these different things that everyone else in the black community, and I shouldn't say everyone else, but different
Right.
things, shared interests.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine I actually met through Bit. His name is Wavell. And he's been with Bit for quite a long time. And one of the things that he said that always stuck with me was, I go to these conferences and I can go toe to toe with anybody when it comes to anything technical. What I can't do is I can't always just go and start talking about Wu-Tang.
Mm.
And I was just like, that's true. Or just anything in that category. Like, sometimes you want to talk to, hey man, did you check out that new Royce the 5'9" album just came out? Yeah, blah 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 blah. Like, those are some of the commonalities that's cultural for us, that we don't always get to have, because we're surrounded. And not that white people don't listen to hip hop. I'm not trying to say that, but on the average, it's not something that in conversation that you're just going to bring up. Whereas with a black person, it's more likely that, oh, okay, yeah, I checked out, or that new Beyonce, or whatever.
you know that
Um, you
that's
know,
that's spot on, and that was one of the things that I really loved about BitCon, is I was able to
oh man, yeah,
to go to BitCon and be around people that look like me, that are in tech, that I can also have a conversation with about, the new Drake album, or, you know,
right,
whatever else. And like, typically we go to work and you probably don't have a lot of things in common with your coworkers, although you might have something in common. You have that. And so it's kind of like, well, you have tech in common, you might have one or two other things, but you feel, out of place, or you just don't relate a lot of times on a personal level. And then outside of that, you might have friends and family, and you can relate to them, you know, because
But
they're
you can't
black.
talk tech with
But you're not talking tech with them. You start talking that
right.
tech stuff, and it's like the eyes glaze over, and it's just like so.
Yep.
Bitcoin was like it was almost a nirvana, man. It was like, man, this is just like, imagine if work was like this. You know,
Right.
and not saying like, oh, we should have all blacks at companies. No, it should be diverse, you know, with a bunch of different people. But to be honest, usually when you're black, you're like maybe the only one on the team.
Yeah. And you know what this year or 2019's BitCon where we had it at what was that place the first night? I can't remember the name of the place. Man, now I'm drawing a blank. But where we had the DJ and we had Taquan emceeing the whole thing, and they were throwing on old school hip hop, and everybody was just up and dancing. And I think Anthony D. Mays was there, and it was all these, and we were just out there having a good time. And you know, and I remember I went up to Anthony, and I was just like, "It's hard to believe this is a tech conference, right?" And he just burst out laughing, like, "Man, like I almost like he couldn't believe like this, you know, that this was." Because that's what we do. We'll get down. You know, we had our after hours events where we had a blast and had a lot of fun. But at the same time, we can switch that up and start talking about tech, and even switch it up again and start talking about social issues that are more prevalent in the Black community. Which I had a few conversations about that. And that's the commonality right there that brings us all together and makes something like BitCon and I know there's other tech conferences for Black people. That's what makes these conferences so incredible.
That's why I like BitCon. You know, like I remember BitCon 2019. I was just sitting down. I was just sitting down on one of the couches, you know, outside some of the sessions, and there was a couple of other folks sitting down as well, and we just randomly sparked up a conversation about Kubernetes, and like then it turned into a conversation about VMware, and then it turned into a conversation about like musical stuff and different artists and stuff like that, and then it's like, it was natural, it was awesome, man. It was just like, so I know exactly what you're saying, and that's why, like, man, I really like BitCon, and I think it's a very positive thing, and we just need more of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were going to do it this year, of course. It was going to be in Chicago, but of course, with the pandemic and everything like that.
Yep.
So, hopefully in 2021 we're able to bring it back if everything goes well. And so, I'm definitely looking forward to that.
You know what? Like, seriously, like with the recent events and stuff, and a lot of companies really pushing for diversity, and a lot of companies even embracing like Black Lives Matter, and just the changes we've seen, you know, to take that a step further, I challenge you, if you're in leadership, to go to BitCon, go to the next one and see how it is. And like, that's the kind of work environment. We need more of that in the work environment. And it's again, it's about just becoming more diverse. But what we have at BitCon is we'd like a piece of that at work. And
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No, you're 100%. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because there's so many of these companies out here that will claim that they can't find people, and it's like, look, we've got conferences going on where you can just come and I tell you what, this is what lets me know some companies are just full of crap. Because when we were planning BitCon, what we would get is we get some companies that'll be like, this is incredible, this is amazing. And then we'll get some companies that will say, oh, you know what, we want to see like what the turnout's going to be like. And we just want to see, and it's just like, are you serious? Like, you say you're serious about diversity and inclusion, and you're telling me you can't even just sponsor a booth to try to, to get in and try to get people from our network to, like, that's crazy. Like, oh yeah, well, what if we just do this and and then we can see for next year? It's like, no, what's wrong with now? You're saying that you're for real about this, then be for real, right? So companies that say they can't find people aren't looking. That's how
Yeah,
I feel about it.
yeah, and I hear you on that. And like anytime I hear that from a company or a recruiter or anyone, I always tell them about blacks in technology, and I tell them about BDPA, and I say, like, there are Slack channels, there are people that run these organizations. Reach out, put your job posting in these places. Like, I'm always seeing from blacks in technology on Twitter, like, you folks are always tweeting about new jobs and stuff. So like,
But I will say this, and this is just a more of a call to action, right? For anybody black that's in tech, the support needs to be there, right? And I know everybody can't they can't give or they can't do this, and just any given time. But what I'm saying is, if you see these jobs on the jobs board, and you know try to find, see if you know somebody that might be a good fit, or if you're looking for a new job, come to, don't always just go to a Glassdoor or Monster or Indeed or LinkedIn. If you're about supporting black organizations, the only way that we're going to continue to be able to get the support of these other organizations is if people from our community and our membership and our audience, our network, supports the things that we do, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. Early on, we used to connect and partner with a lot of organizations around providing complimentary tickets to conferences. So we had a thing with O'Reilly, and O'Reilly would give us like a couple of complimentary tickets to whatever, Velocity or OSCON, or we would get two free tickets. Now I know that travel and things and maybe it may be an issue for some people, but these tickets are not cheap.
no, they're not.
OSCON tickets aren't right. And we used to do things like we tweet about them. We try to get a raffle going. We try to do something to kind of promote that we had these tickets, and we would get very little participation. And I say that to say that they watch, because they give you codes, so they know when you've used those codes. And if people aren't using the code, then they're not going to come back next year and say, okay, we're going to give you complimentary tickets, because now they feel like it's money wasted. So there's a responsibility on these companies, but there's also a certain level of responsibility within the community, that if you see organizations like that, I'm not talking about monetary donations. I'm just simply talking about come to the website, click on some links, listen to some podcasts. If there's a raffle going on, and it may be something that may interest you about at least throw your name in a hat, click on some jobs, try to, come here first if you're looking for a job as opposed to somewhere else. Like, that level of support. And this is across any organization that's similar to Blocks of Technology. So BDPA, NESB, any number of them that are out there now. Like, they need support from us in order to continue. Otherwise, it's, why are we doing this if we right?
Yeah,
If we can't,
definitely.
yeah,
And one thing that I can say, Greg, is like, keep doing what you're doing.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I know that it can be discouraging at times, if you're not getting the level of participation and stuff, but it is impacting people. It's impacted me on a personal level in positive ways. I brought my wife to BitCon 2019, and it's impacting us. It's impacting a lot of people. So keep doing what you're doing. I totally understand what you're saying, though. Like, there's another guy that does a ton of stuff in the community. Amazing guy, and he's doing stuff for youth. His name is Michael Wolf. Shout out to him.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I know Michael.
Yeah, you know Michael, and so he's always doing amazing stuff, and he's trying to educate the youth about tech and stuff like that. And he's involved in BDPA,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the events he does, a lot of them get a lot of participation, and some of them maybe don't get so much. But when you have people like him and people like you and other people in the communities putting stuff on, like, yeah, we need to be engaged. And the other thing I'll say too, like, Blacks in technology and even BDPA and even just doing stuff with like Michael Wolff has been huge around networking opportunities. Me me speaking at OzCon actually came about because I was connected. I got connected with Tamika Reed
Oh, nice.
through the Blacks in Technology Slack, right? So I got connected with her, and I saw her post about something about speaking at OzCon, and I hit her up. We're chatting about it. She's like, "Yeah, submit if you want to. I'll put in a good word for you on the back end and things like that." And I think she was a huge reason, maybe even the reason why I was selected as a speaker there, right? And so just networking with different people and also getting to know her and the amazing things that she's doing in the tech space with women in Linux. She's presented at HashiCorp in Europe. Like, there's a lot of people, Black people in tech, that are doing amazing things. And if anything, come to the Blacks in Tech meetings, come to the Slack channel and network, get to know other people.
Yeah, yeah. Tamika's super dope. I met her for the first time at PuppetConf, like back in like 2014, 2015.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's when I met her, and she's super smart, man. Like,
Oh yeah.
intimidating smart.
Yeah, basically.
She's one of those people. Yeah, so I mean, you're right, man. Like, that's what this whole thing brings. It's all about community and helping each other and helping each other progress and the support and and I wasn't trying to like admonish people. I just want to see a more of that type of thing. Like if organizations like BIT is going to survive, it's only going to survive if we have that level of support going forward. So
Definitely.
so Steve, before we jump out of here, I want you to go ahead and tell people like how they can reach out to you, like give out your Twitter handles, all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can check out my blog. That's the best place to get information on what I'm doing. It's buchatech.com. That's buchatech.com. All my information is out there if you want to collaborate on something or you want to reach out and you're interested in doing a book, you want to know how to get started, you want to speak at a conference, if you're just looking for some guidance on something in an area where I've already done some stuff, feel free to reach out. You can also reach me on Twitter at the same handle, so at Buchatech. And then you'll see me in places like Pluralsight. I'm doing courses out there now, just doing a ton of stuff all the time to continue to elevate myself and elevate the community as a whole. So thanks, Greg, for having me on. This has been amazing. And as always, it's always great to talk with you, man.
Yeah, same here, man. I definitely appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your journey, sharing your opinion and your expertise with the audience. We're definitely. I'm going to be reaching out because you blog, so I want to see if maybe you can write some articles for BIT as well. So I'll be reaching out, connecting with you on that. And until hopefully we can see you at the next BitCon and keep doing what you do, man, and spreading this throughout the community.
Yeah, definitely. And you will see me at the next BitCon for sure. So, all right, Greg, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks
for having me on.
All right, take care.
You too.
That's it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology BIT Tech Talk podcast. I definitely want to thank our guest, Steve Buchanan. And What else? So if you want to check us out at blacksandtechnology.net. Blacks and Technology on all the social media. And until next time, take care.
Blacks in Technology.
Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology. Blacks in technology.